Inmendham video. Yay. On the brain stuff. So, not for the faint of heart and such. I'm going to say things boldly, like there's no free will, and your brain is you're just a robot with a set of programs that you've acquired in kind of a sloppy manner through some sort of sloppy life. And especially in the world today, even though it's 2018, facts are just these, mushy things that aren't really facts. And so we don't even have logic to depend on because so many people have such a poor understanding of just even the basic rudimentary function of the planet. And, there's truthers and all kinds of nutcases, and it's really bad. So anyway, it's idiocracy all over the place. So that's a sad context to have a discussion about how brains work, because you're just put at a huge disadvantage in having any hope of arguing that through that mush there's some sort of capacity for there to be structure, that something good will climb out of this swamp that we've created. And yeah, that sounds kind of unrealistic to expect. So anyway, so the mystic, I've been badgering him a little bit in comments, trying to get him to say something, to get onto the real subject, and the real subject of, say, a disagreement between his kind and my kind. And it being the fact that I think we're smart enough to know things, and once we know those things, we can have a devotion, a personal ambition to recognize that the little simple thing, a fact, right? If you're going to have a war, you can't win the war if nobody fights in the war. So somebody has to fight. You kind of recognize that somebody's got this responsibility or this duty, and then some people recognize it and they say, okay, I'll show up and do what I'm supposed to do because I know we can't win if I don't show up. That kind of thing. So in a sense, he'll say that's very unrealistic of the soldiers to show up for the war, and I would argue that no, it's the only way. The only reason to have hope is that that mechanism actually works. That somebody will show up to fight for what's right and what's wrong, and we can kind of, the point is, the smart people can kind of know what right and wrong is, and they can know what they should be defending and what they should be fighting. What things are good for the future, what things are bad. So I've made this point over and over, but it's kind of an obvious piece of logic that our welfare in this place called the present is just a tiny portion of potential human history. And if we, as a generation, which is quite obvious we have as a generation, just take and don't give anything, don't just run on the road and don't never pave the roads, then there'll be a road like the road in Congo. I just saw a documentary of the roads in the Congo. So bad. But that's what you end up with. You end up with a condition that's so much worse than nothing. Because you have a bunch of people dependent on infrastructure that doesn't exist anymore. And anyway, that's far afield. So there's just this, the mystic is conceding some points. I mean, well, he's not conceding them. He's conceding to the point that you have to actually make these points and be clear what your rationalizations are, what you're defending. And so he likes to classify people as people who are free will people and people who aren't free will people. And he would call the not free will people the we, and the thems are the free willers, and that they're not capable of having certain conversations because, yes, they really haven't understood that everything they're saying and everything they believe in is just a pile of shit that they've grown attached to because it works for them personally. And that's not the only standard, but it does become the Homer Simpson standard. I mean, anything given to Homer Simpson turns into far less of a tool than it would be if it was in somebody else's hands, somebody skilled. And so all facts are ruined by a Homer Simpson in a sense, because they'll be used in some poor manner rather than some purposeful manner. All right. So how to get to this overview thing? So the real overview is where I'm going to get to, but I'm going to go backwards once I point out where we are. So where we are is at some point where smart people know this is a shitty game. It's totally unfair, stupid, retarded on so many levels, and that even when you're playing your best, it's still crap. It's still made out of exploitation, and it's way too expensive. I mean, all kinds of arguments I've made. Yeah, these are sort of anti-nihilist arguments, yet the mystic will never, just won't go there for whatever reason. Like it's somehow it's impolite, you know, to point out that he can see no logic in perpetuating a very bad game, and he would, I think, plainly say that if it wasn't for some inhibition, some program that says it's none of my business or something. I don't know what it is. I don't know what his apprehension is made out of. But anyway, you have this idea that we're organisms, animals, and everything we do is, you know, cats are cats, groundhogs are groundhogs, birds are birds, you know, they're all programmed, and humans have a certain range of programming, and that range is just really the same kind of mechanism. We are attracted and repelled, we're addicted, we're comforted by certain things for certain reasons, and that everything we do will be confined into some sort of thing that we make for ourselves right. You know, it works for us, not only if it's going to work for society. And so the argument is whether a person who is distracted by an awful lot of facts or notions in their head that point out things repeatedly about how you're doomed, you're going to die, you're never going to be ready, there's more work to do, and then recognize all the things wrong with the way everything you enjoy is tainted by it being wasteful or inefficient or bad for you or bad for other people. You know, that it's all just bad. You know, we're just making lesser of evil choices. And well, I'm really not getting to the divide. Divide is about whether you should waste your time trying to be a good human in the sense of good cockroach. Be a good human in the sense of your most base needs, which is to just manipulate your function into thinking you are full. You know, that you had a good day, that everything went okay, everything's all right. All this, you know, what's that stupid jingle songy thing? Just be happy. Don't worry, be happy. Get any of these notions about doing anything that matters out of your head, and just concentrate on keeping yourself in some sort of ignorance bliss. Ignorance. I like that. Ignorance bliss. So just ignore the fact that you have this whole pile of facts where you know there's people being mistreated all over the place. There's all kinds of, it's just grotesquely unfair. People are inheriting money and claiming they're super wonderfully accomplished people because they inherited money. You know, they're rocking around all proud of themselves. I inherited money. You know, like, you know, they earned it. You know, just hilarious things like that. And so, yeah, somehow you're supposed to just ignore all that obvious insanity. Like, the game is so bad. You know, it's such a preposterous game of soccer in the sense that it's just so, you know, it's professionals playing kindergartners. I mean, it's just such a racket, such a sham of a game. And you should ignore that. You should ignore this fundamental perception of, even if it was a good game, it's just a game made out of attachment and addiction and need and want and hunger. Why keep creating pigs so they can just eat and die? I mean, it's just stupid. So yeah, but ignore all that and just stay in your own little world of you're one little cockroach and just manage your own cockroach behavior. Versus the alternative, which would be recognize that, yes, nobody fights against the unfairness and the silliness and the stupidness. Nobody points it out. Then there's no chance that it's ever going to get fixed or cleaned up. And he would just argue there's no chance anyway, and so by that definition he's decided there's no even viability to making arguments about anything otherwise. And I don't think he has reason to do that. That would be the argument, I suppose. But that's really the divide. The divide is, should you be a self-indulgent asshole attempting to just trying to find your own little bliss thing by not only getting some of the things you want, the physical comforts, the minimal ones, and recognizing that some of the bullshit you might want is just that bullshit and you really don't need it, like a 2-week vacation in Hawaii or something. Nah, you can do that in your living room if you really try. You don't need to waste all that money. That we have things that we want that we don't really want them all that much. We just think we do, and that we could fix that in ourselves in the sense of recognize that those wants, if you just let them slide by, if you just let that train of thought just go right past you, that you might even forget it ever existed as a train, and that simple little tricks like that can save you from the grief of getting caught up in your impulses and your moods. Don't let your mood dictate your future. So don't let a bad mood or a moment of pettiness compromise your future. And so these are little tricks you can play. So this is little self-help bullshit about how to make your life more comfortable. And I would argue that what the world needs is people who are uncomfortable, so they'll fight. Is they're not going to fight if they're comfortable. If they're comfortable with the idea of just saying, hell with the Nazis, who cares, whatever, I just won't read the newspaper, not my problem, then yes, they win, evil wins, so to speak, bad wins, and you've chosen to be, in my opinion, a bad person because you're basically chosen to abdicate your responsibility to the future that's going to have to live in the shit. And even if you're going to argue you can't fix the shit entirely, it's clear that we can make huge improvements in the shit. So at minimum, if we're going to lay eggs in shit, we can make it less shitty shit that we're laying the future eggs in. So even that argument, I think, totally wipes out any notion that smart people should spend any time at all running programs in their head that say it's okay to abdicate, it's okay to run away, it's okay to not focus on the fact that this is a shithole and it's going to keep shitting on things, and it's going to shit on them in very bad, nasty ways that I certainly wouldn't accept as the bargain, and I wouldn't want it happening to me, kind of thing. And that in fact is going to keep happening, and if we don't stop it, there's nobody else who's going to. Just a fact. So anyway, that's the long way to get to the point of a real divergence in our view, where I just don't care whether you're comfortable. I mean, nothing personal. I just care that you're survivably useful in the fight. So if you have to be comfortable just to survive, if you're really bad, I understand. Okay, you're crippled, you can't fight. But if you have any kind of ball left, and you can manifest any kind of pick up the hammer and just give the nail one hit, yeah, do it. Okay, yeah, it won't be any fun. It'll make your wrist hurt. Might give your arm a little strain or something, and you'll have to spend a couple of days being uncomfortable about that. But yes, do it, because who knows? And so I want people who are capable of migrating their, who have programs that recognize that you can't really be a good person and be a bailouter and be a, it's not my problem, I didn't do it, it's not my fault, bullshitter, and just say, okay, well, thinking about it doesn't do me any good, so I'm not going to do that. When thinking about it is the only way people will talk about it, and it's the only way they'll do something about it. And those are the steps required. Not thinking about it means it won't get talked about. Not talked about means it won't get done. And so you're just guaranteeing failure by creating a bunch of people who, you know, won't do their share of nail hitting. So that's our huge divergence. So the real point is that, as stated in many of these videos in the past, a thing me and the mystic can sort of agree on is that I have no hope of free-willing my own brain into doing a goddamn thing. It has programs, it has habits, it has routines, it's all just reflexes, it's all just knee jerks. That's all it is, a bunch of jerks of things that got stuck into my brain through personal experiences. And for me, the personal experiences were louder than the experiences you had. You know, I never saw a 13-year-old girl get burned to death under a gas truck. I didn't personally see that, but I personally imagined it. And even doing that can get you in trouble, right? See, I could go out and interview people on the street, and I say, have you ever imagined a 13-year-old girl, you know, from start to finish, like trying to imagine the actual process of being burned to death, you know, the 5-minute process? Have you ever imagined that? And yes, most of them would say, no, I didn't do that. That's like retarded. It's like imagining tunneling up my own asshole or something. Why would I want to imagine doing that? And so you didn't have those experiences. Without those experiences, it's like you didn't go on the fantastic voyage, and you didn't see the heart beating, and you didn't see the arteries and how they work, and so you don't have an understanding that this is reality. This kind of shit will happen, and it's going to be part of the definition of what this game we're playing will create. And, you know, if you're going to defend the game, you're defending burning 13-year-old girls under gas trucks. It's just what you're doing. There's no way of getting around it. You can't have the one without the other. So it's a clear price being paid. And then you could go through all the millions of other things. Like, I have attempted, okay, to imagine the 2 million feral cats in New Jersey, you know, trying to eke out an existence. And imagine how many get run over and half killed, and, you know, all the just horrible stuff that had their frozen kittens and things, and all the, you know. But there's too many to imagine, right? So I can only do this much of it. Maybe somebody else has done that much, though. And that's going to change who they are. Their programming is going to be changed by those images and those thoughts, and recognizing that that's what's connected to my existence. My existence has all this nasty shit tied to it. And it's not some frickin' free ride where you just say, in isolation, you know, would I do me again? Now the question is, would you do average again? And people don't even have I don't think even have a rational perception of what average life on Earth is. And so that's a real flaw in their facts and their understanding, their perception. So anyway, the real point is, I could ask people, do you want to be a good person? And maybe they all might say, sure. You know, as long as it doesn't cost me anything, why not? But that's the whole thing. Now we have to define what good and bad is. And then you get into arguments about capitalism or communism or whatever the, you know, resource economy bullshit. You know, everybody has their own factional notion about what a working system would look like. And I would argue that all of them are bullshit and nonsense, which just demonstrates the idiocracy part, where we have so little that we can even define as good and bad. Now, I could argue again on the solar panel argument that it's just so obviously stupid. You know, the huge waste of the valuable resource. Millions of solar panels. And they have a potential to create this 100% of energy if utilized right. And we're utilizing 30% by putting them on people's roofs. 30%. And you're just saying, and it would cost less to utilize more, you know, as the irony. For much less money, you could utilize more of the value of the solar panel by simply moving it a mile away, just one mile. you know, putting it on the ground and having it move with the sun. I mean, really simple technology, having one big converter to do the electrical conversion instead of each house having a separate individual electronic converter. Huge savings, just gigantic gain in efficiency. And you could just say, you know, it's just right in your face, stupid, plainly. There's no counter fact to argue against here. It's just totally a waste of the resource, just a huge throwing away free energy, so to speak. It's just so obnoxiously dumb, and yet we can't fix that. So there's evidence that, oh man, this is so broken that this conversation is useless, right? People can't figure out how to utilize the value of a solar panel, aren't going to figure out how to, you know, play with memes, ideas, and thoughts to improve each other, to do something to each other's brains so each other's brains understands how these programs work. Alright, so the thing the mystic is doing is basically thinking he's doing people a favor by explaining to them how the thoughts that come to you in the short term, the quick impulse things, yeah, they're garbage. Always take some time to think about whatever it is you're going to do and make sure it's the right thing to do. Just, you know, a couple of minutes extra time. Doesn't take much extra time. Do a little extra thinking and you figure out, oh yeah, this is nonsense. I don't need that. Yes, I need to get the work done. Yes, the roof leaks. Got to work on that. A little bit of thought and you figure out which things to prioritize and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, we all should probably do that better. But I have to concede, even though I have knowledge of that gimmick, it's pretty hard to exercise it sometimes because of this mood problem. And when you're in the wrong mood, you're just in the wrong mood. It just, you know, you're just not motivated. You just can't find the motivation to do what your better judgment has already declared the right thing to do. Go take your vitamins. Not too much work. Just walk over there and open the bottle and take your vitamin. Not a big deal. But somehow, because we don't function as well as we would like, yeah, we're stuck with a bit of inefficiency in even being able to have some running system, some program that always judges us and says you're wasting efficiency. You're wasting efficiency, and it has to keep reminding us, or we will waste efficiency. All right, so he sees value in doing that. I don't see that as not having value, but it has the taint again, where his purpose is more focused on turning people back into monkeys, back into lower form human, rather than the human that does see the facts. And that's really the big distinction. And again, that's where I think that's just stupid. You know, it's can't be a good idea. It's got to be bad for the future to have a bunch of humans now thinking about what's in it for me and how do I maximize my personal gain. And so I have to sort of come back to that argument because he emphasizes this idea that you always have to make it personal. So even when you're doing something good, like jumping on a grenade to save your pals, the only way you can really do it is you have to think that's, if you don't do it, you're being dishonorable and you'll humiliate yourself and it'll be kind of embarrassing that you didn't do it and all that kind of crap. You have to have some mechanism where you know this is how you be Superman. And if you're not going to be Superman, then you have to be like regular man, and you don't want to be regular man. So that's not good enough. So you have to create some sort of internal mechanism so you understand that it's the right thing for you to do, even though, yes, you get blown up. It's still good for you. And yes, that you always have to do that. You always have to personalize any ambition to do anything valuable. But there's lots of easy ways to do that. Now, for me, to personalize it is so easy because I recognize I didn't plan on being born me. I didn't in any way control it. I didn't shove myself into my mother's uterus and, pop me out into the world in America and under, middle class circumstances and certain advantages and blah, blah, blah. I didn't do any of that. I was subjected to the system. The system decided. All right? And I know that in the future, something just like me is going to go through the same process. So I recognize a huge meanness in those future individuals. And I recognize that if I keep letting people have, glorify retardation, for example, which they've now done, that's you can always find that. You always know when a culture's gone really dumb is when it makes retardation some sort of spiritual disease. And we're sort of getting there when it's a horror, and plainly it's not a good thing. I wouldn't want it to happen to my enemy, kind of a thing. It's not a good thing. And so I'm just saying, once you recognize the future as essentially being nothing different than yourself, in the sense that each one of these individuals is just pushed out of a hole, and they're not me, and they're not you, and they're not this, and they're not that, they're not thems, they're pretty much us's. That's the minimum you could do, is at least recognize they're us's. They're part of something that could be you, could be just like you. And once you recognize that, well, then your self-interest is obvious, because now I'm doing the same thing I'd be doing if I had a clone, if I had a twin brother, and I would recognize that, shit, it wouldn't be very smart if a broken leg was coming at us. It wouldn't be very smart for me to say, let it happen to him, because I'd sort of know that that's the same thing as saying, let it happen to me, So, people don't get this. They always turn this into some sort of reincarnation thing. Again, it has nothing to do with reincarnation. It just has to understand parallel things that are, in every real respect, the same. Okay, except little tiny irrelevant differences, left, right, of the hand. It's all the same thing. And it's all the same thing. Feeling creature thrust into a world that it tries to make sense of. So, although there's plenty of people I despise because of their ideology, because of all these silly programs they have, somehow they've gotten attached to religion, or gotten attached to some sort of capitalist power game, or some kind of racial blah blah, and they're assholes, complete assholes, and it's very hard to see any humanity, any of myself in any of them. I clearly can see the other side of it, where there's a ton of people I can see who, for just a little bit of my advantages that I had, I would be them, the homeless, or somebody with, some mental illness, who's been on a bunch of drugs that now have them totally fucked in the head. That could have been me. Oh, there are lots of people in bad circumstance. Could have been me. I could have made the mistakes that have them in the ditch. No doubt about it. And so even though they're different than me, and I can't applaud, their function, I can understand I could be functioning just as badly as they are. Where I can't really imagine myself being a Republican, for example. No, I could never be that stupid. I could be a retard, but I couldn't be a Republican. So anyway, but the point is, this all life is. This life is going through this, walk this greasy tightrope over this pool of sharks for no accomplishment, for just none. For removing thorns. You get to the other side and they pull a bunch of nails out of you. And you go, thank you. But that's what we're doing this for. It's a forced march for a gain that's merely getting us back to the zero we had when we didn't exist. The unharassed state. And life is, the mystic would agree, he sort of said the same words that I have said, that we're not built to be comfortable. We're built to be uncomfortable, so we challenge the world, so we fight it for our survival. Comfortable things don't win. Uncomfortable things win. So let's see how far to drag this. So I'll just go. I wrote down some little key pointy things, and they'll probably get me off on a whole nother tangent. But look, the big word is reflex. Reflex, reflex, reflex. Well, what I want to do is read some of the comments that provoke this, so maybe I'll do that. Just because, I wrote them, and I don't want to waste them. So we were having an argument about, the mystic doesn't really, now he states anyway, even though in the past he seemed keenly interested in conversations about function, like how does the brain exactly do this battle of ideas? How does it do this competing programs, competing bits of impulse? And how does one impulse win? And those conversations seem to have some meaning to them in the past. Well, now they don't have any meaning. But regardless. So before I knew that he didn't have any interest in those arguments, we're still leading up to getting to an argument about what's more important, your function or your comfort. That's what I was trying to get to. What's more important? How you work, how you affect the world in total. That is, adding up what you feel and adding up what you made others feel, in the future especially. That's the real equation. Did you waste your potential focused on you, or did you maximize your potential by recognizing that you're in a bigger game than you? Alright, so anyway, if we can agree, so this is after some arguments, and I was trying to get to the point, so if we can agree on the not horribly technical point that brain is just reflexes, so, and I said ignorant and informed / cultured, so we have reflexes that are really primitive, the chick is hot, the food smells good, really crude, and then we have these other reflexes of ideological perception, philosophy, if you want to call it that, view of the world. And we have things in all kinds of categories. And a lot of that is cultured and sophisticated in that we understand that beating your wife is wrong, wife beater's bad, that kind of, we have lots of categories and lots of reasonable pigeonholes where pigeons belong. Assholes belong in the asshole hole. Okay, that kind of thing. And that's what we have gained through 10,000 years of human civilization, is we've gained understanding of a lot of these social mechanisms about what it is to be human and how it is to behave decently and all of that kind of crap. And so part of our programs are those more sophisticated, civilized programs of just recognizing that if you can do things with causing less harm, that less harm is good. So yeah, if you have a choice, do it messy or do it well, you do it well, not messy. If it's going to be the same amount of work, yeah, always choose the better job, not the lesser job. Okay, then isn't the remaining challenge to determine what kind of reflexes are best to help others to have? So this is sort of getting to the point that, again, I can't free will myself into being anybody. Somebody else has to inspire me with words. They have to say a word, like reflexes or some other word, and that words have to trigger things inside of me. Or they explain a fact, like there's no God, and they give me some good evidence that there's no God, and then I understand that, oh, we're just biological organisms. We don't have any magical function here but to consume and reproduce. That's what the DNA is built to do. And here we have acquired knowledge of the game, so now we're smarter than the game we're playing. The game we're playing was made for dumb organisms, and here we're stuck with this liability of knowing we're way too smart to play tic-tac-toe and enjoy it, because we know you can't win. We know you can't, there's no game really to play. It just doesn't have any function. Once you know the trick, there's no game. And once you're smart, there's no game. Alright, it seems you think the world needs to have more people attempting to find bliss through ignorance. And so that's the key argument, is, how do you help other people? By talking soothing shit, by, you know, smoothing ointment on their wounds, or by pointing out how you just ran over a cat, you just did this, you just caused that, you just made this mess, you just endorsed that shit. You're a fucking menace. I mean, which way are you helping people more? By helping them to, you know, be more insensitive and blind and ignorant? Or are you going to help them, quote unquote, them, by having them recognize that if they fix the future now, it'll cost so much less? Okay. I would argue that prescription will cause much more long-term pain than any trivial short-term gain will be worth. So yes, any comfort we give the afflictors, okay, is not going to be a good idea, because they're menaces and they will create a mess in the future, and that future is so much bigger than the present, and their catastrophe will be monumental compared to the minimal amount of comfort we squandered their future for. I mean, we got a little tiny thrill, and they're going to have a long time strapped to the gurney, you know, being tortured. If the future could hear what you are saying, I don't think it would be pleased. So he didn't respond to that comment, because I don't think there is any response, except you're right. I really shouldn't talk this placating shit to these fucking morons. I should really explain how you're all fucking morons, you're menaces, and the sooner you can, you know, find some way to get your nutsack ripped off so you can't reproduce, the better off the world will be. Something like that. Alright, so then a deeper conversation about the brain happened later. Alright, so I stated, awareness is a mixing bowl for feelings and associated symbols, memory clips. I think modern ideas can become fast reflexes. So a point the mystic was making is that you have two methods of thinking. The first one is just the flashcards, like the label, the sign, post blinking in neon, food, and then the second one says cheap food, you know, not very well regulated, looks awful dirty and skanky, I'll probably get herpes. Don't eat there. Something like that. And so we should always pay attention to the slower thing. And so I disagree with a couple parts of what he was saying there, in the sense that sometimes the quick reflexes now, once you become aware of how the world works, you can have very quick reflexes that, so now you can recognize bullshitter, like Trump supporter or something. Bullshit. You're an idiot. You can automatically recognize it. You can automatically detect it. The radar goes off and it's always right. And so the immediate response can be a very sophisticated response because it's been learned over time and it's been well tested. And so it's a very good reflex, even though it's a sophisticated statement about a concept of good or bad. And it's a very reliable definition. Alright. So the other part of that argument is this idea of awareness. So when we're saying awareness, that's the part where we're conscious. So the idea is, so it's kind of like the hard problem in philosophy. Why are we conscious if it's just a programmed machine? Why does it bother making us aware of anything? As I've pointed out, well, it has to make us aware, because awareness is the only way you can do the feeling thing. You can only do the negative sensation thing, the ouch, by being conscious of it. An unconscious feeling can't hurt you, can't get to you, can't do its value synthesis thing. It can't synthesize value and create it inside your brain unless it does it in this conscious way, because it can't mean anything. An unfelt feeling, just, you can't be unconsciously tortured. It just can't happen. It has to be in something called a consciousness. Alright. The idea is not to use, so this is the mystic, the idea is not to use fast reflexes even if they are good, because fast reflexes are always coming from the weak place. So he's saying even if they're good, fast reflexes, he's saying they're bad. And I'm saying it's a weak place. And I'm saying, well, it's not a weak place if it's, again, earned its position. You know, when it's been 99.9% pure, then it's probably a good bet. Because you're probably not going to think anything better than 99.99% reliability. The idea is to use slow answers because they are less likely to be manipulated. Well, obviously, if you have endless amounts of time to think and ponder things endlessly, then I'd say yes, go ahead. Think more all the time. But obviously, who has all that extra time? So the idea that you can waste too much time figuring out whether somebody's an asshole when you already know they're an asshole, I mean, there's no real point in trying to figure out maybe Trump's not an idiot. No, of course he's an idiot. No, wasting time figuring out whether he's not an idiot is just a waste of time. He's an idiot. All right. It is like it takes longer to build, but is long-term more solid. So again, these are things I would generally say yes if we're talking about building a building, but we're not doing that. We're talking about getting through your life in some sort of way where you can serve the valuable thing called time. So there are places where you just don't have time to endlessly research and all that kind of crap, and you're going to have to go with a gut feeling. All right, your mixing bowl idea as written is useless. So again, unnecessary, but whatever. All right, your mixing bowl idea is useless. That's the quote. Well, it explains the two things have to be combined. So it explains my point is that you have to, the whole point of the consciousness is to give reality to the value. So you have to make it an ouch. You have to make it negative. You have to make it real as a negative, and you can only do that by actually experiencing it consciously. And then the idea is that somehow you're going to associate a negative to a thing, like a Trump. And you're going to tie the two together. And so the only place you can tie them, sort of, is in the consciousness where the two of them are in the same place at the same time and you can stick them together. Sort of. So that's why I called it a mixing bowl. It's because you're basically just taking value impressions and attaching them to events. So and much of that comes with the context of imagination. So if you see somebody trapped under a burning oil tanker, you're not only seeing what they're doing, but you're also seeing your understanding of what's happening to them. So even if they're not screaming, you can sort of see their burning flesh in your brain. You can see lots of things to indicate, ooh, ooh, ooh. You can see ooey bits. Okay, and those ooey bits will now be attached to it, even though you didn't really see it in the actual event. You know it's part of the actual event. So your whole impression is a bigger construct. It has lots of imagined bits and memory bits and past bits are all attached to every one of these concepts. So when somebody says the word Republican, everybody has a reaction, right? In my reaction, there's Richard Nixon, and then there's you know, the Bushes, and then there's, you know, these capitalist whores and the inheritance lovers, and, you know, Christian lunatics, and there's, okay, so there's all this shit tied to it, and you see their grotesque hypocrisy because they see that these Christian liars, you know, will iconize this complete bum, Trump, okay, who obviously didn't give a shit about the Bible. It's not his favorite book. He couldn't give a crap about a single Christian principle. You know, the odds of a rich man getting the kingdom of God or those of a camel going through the eye of a needle, 5 times in the Bible at minimum. Well, it doesn't mean anything, though. It's just a piece of shit. They wrote it for no reason. It's in there for no reason. That's all, that whole statement. I mean, these Christians are such hypocrites. Just so the Christians can hate on some foreign Christians. They don't like the foreign Christians getting into the country, the Mexicans. You know, whatever. I mean, it's just so fucking stupid. But that's not even. But anyway, but everybody has that. They had these things connected to things, and I don't know how people make their silly connections. You know, how they rationalize these silly alliances, you know, between the right-wing Christians and these greedy inheritance whores. But anyway, that's a whole other subject. Well, it explains that the two things have to be combined. Either feelings and thoughts are present view and past imagined view. So I was trying to say with past imagined view that, yes, it's mostly memories that our imagination is made out of. Like, we don't really do any creative imagining. We take pieces of what we've already seen and combine them within the rules that we've learned, within the, oh, we know it has to be spherical, so we can, we can fit them into a circle, and we can fit them into, but block letters do this and this. And this is all stuff that we've learned through experience, through contact, through having the experience of seeing something well done and saying, ooh, that's really nice, and then your brain tries to imagine it. What's the elements of it? What makes it nice? And then you try to synthesize that, and that's your creativity. You're not really creating. You're just building on what you've learned and mixing it together, combining it. All right. I think it also explains why we need to see the bowl for it to work. So the idea of seeing is the consciousness. It can't work if the feelings aren't in a place that's real. If we can't feel the feelings, they can't hurt you. And if they can't hurt you, they can't control you. You really do have to experience a feeling to know a feeling. So there's no other way around that one, I don't think. Consciousness started with a feeling, an ouch. And then the association with the ouch, connecting it to things like shark and whales and this and that, whatever the little bit that was doing the first ouching was, whatever he was running from, he associated the ouches with things. And his brain gave him some pre-programmed, once it started working with this ouch, it gave him some pre-programmed ouches in the form of emotions like fear, that would give him some sense that ouch may be coming, okay? And the signals, the smell is in the air. I can smell the bear bad for my complexion, run away. Anyway, the closed subconscious cannot show what the open bowl exposes. So just giving a metaphor for the fact that consciousness has to be open, or it can't work, because that's the only way to make value, is to create this awareness thing, this in-my-face thing. And now this in-my-face thing of awareness has been expanded not only to do ouch, but it's doing all kinds of subtle interaction with all these words. So every word in my vocabulary is associated with a little hint of emotion, a little hint of spice, a texture. The words all have a texture, an appetizableness. They're all, either that word tastes good or that word tastes bad, kind of thing. There's definitely an element of sensation to the concepts. All right, so he says, I'm trying. Yes, consciousness only shows what it is conscious of, tautological. But why does it have to show only mixed content? So I never implied that it has to be mixed. You can just feel frickin' somebody hits you in the head with a hammer and you just feel, ow, fuck, ow, ow. Or kicks you in the balls, probably a better example, where the pain, you're totally focused on just the one thing. You don't really think about, oh, I got to pay my taxes, or something. You're not thinking about anything else when that is happening. So it's not like it has to have mixed content. I'm just saying it's the place where if you wanted to stick something to a feeling, that's the place to do it, because the feeling's there, right? You can catch the feeling there. All right. Let's see, mixed with them, idea things. Okay, try this. Feelings have to be seen, awareness. So that's what I'm saying. You have to have consciousness to see a feel. To feel a feeling, you have to be conscious. Therefore, anything that is going to be mixed with them, idea things like notions, ideas, thoughts, symbols, they will then all be seen also. So if you're going to attach something to a sensation, a positive or negative sense, yeah, it has to pop into the consciousness for you to do it well. All right. Are you trying to say that feelings have the key to awareness and can kind of take things in through to awareness with them? Now, I wasn't really saying they can drag things in, but how exactly the subconscious, obviously the subconscious leaves a trail that you can look back. I can remember sort of what I said a minute ago. I can sort of remember, so we obviously have, there's obviously tails on all of this stuff that in our short-term memory that keeps those connections kind of open, where we're not seeing it. It's in subconscious, but I can drag it into conscious real easy. Meaning the triggers, the trigger words can trigger, the pulling back of a concept. All right. Are you trying to say, this is him, that feelings have the key to awareness? If not, I still can't see the need for mixing. So, again, I'm not really arguing that there's a need for mixing. I'm arguing that there's a need for the ouch to be conscious. And I would argue that if it's going to get mixed, that would be an obvious place to mix it because the feeling is right there in the consciousness. So if the brain has a function where there's a purpose in attaching things, this is how they get attached. And I think that is demonstrated in how we're conditioned. So when we're living our lives, and young people, so to speak, and we go have interactions in the world, and things happen to us that are bad, things around that we are in our sphere of awareness end up getting attached to that thing. I would argue mostly on a conscious level, in the sense we had to be consciously aware, but even on a subconscious level, things like what color hat the person is wearing is going to be connected to the experience I'm having. And so if it was a red hat and I'm having a really bad experience, red might get some of that bad experience on it as a concept. So when red comes up later, red's going to feel a little worse than it felt before because it has that bad experience tied to it. And so that's sort of the tie between this conscious and subconscious. There's this gray area where there's a bunch of detail in the environment that I do think you're conscious of, in the sense that you see it, your brain processes it, and it gets connected to the experiential feeling. And I think that's essentially how conditioning works. Anyway, it's reward and punishment. It's guilt by association. I think that's entirely how the brain works. It's all guilt by association. Certain things get associated with certain things, and you get fucked. And I've personally kind of lived that, in the sense that I ended up with a neurotic condition of bad conditioning, where I was conditioned into thinking, being too far from my couch is a really bad idea, and once that owns you, it owns you. It's really hard to uncondition it, because the only way I can make it positive is to have positive reinforcement. So that would mean I have to go out into the world and have a really wonderful time. And I can't have a wonderful time anywhere, let alone in the world. And so that's really not going to happen. So it's really hard to recondition those negative associations. Those are the real thing we're fighting, is our conditioned responses. The responses that happened to us when we were kids. And I'm grateful for many of mine, just because they did give me the humility to be somebody who could care. They knocked me down enough pegs where I could recognize that my obligation is, I became a vegetarian. I took care of sick animals. I did a lot of things. I used to bury other, cats would get run over on the street, and I'd bury them in my backyard because, couldn't just leave them out in the street. I'm glad I had those um, conditioned responses. Grateful for them, but they're also a huge liability in that, you know, if they get out of hand, yeah, they break your ability to function. So anyway, and like I said, it's really hard to undo it. Once you know you're in a bad game, you know, all the bullshit in the world just ain't gonna make the good ship, you know, the bad ship nightmare into the good ship lollipop. I mean, if somebody's standing up and giving you a bunch of propaganda of how it's all going to be all right, just ain't going to work when you've seen the ship you're on. Yeah. All right. Let's see. If not, I still can't see the need for mixing. Be it feelings with ideas or ideas with feelings. Why can't they be seen on their own? Why does everything have to be value tainted? I guess it would be his broadest question. I would say that that's the only way this whole reward and punishment thing works, and it's the only way you actually do get this committee of programs, these various programs, to decide who's the winner and the loser, is based on all those value taints. So through time you value taint these concepts, and some of them keep coming up winners, you know, honorable, decent, correct, and others keep coming up shithead, selfish, fuckhead, don't do that. And so yeah, the good guys that you've declared, that by committee have been declared the good guys, just by the fact that your associations, your rudimentary associations are pain bad, pleasure good, fairness good, exploitation bad. I mean, these simple principles are what's going to decide what programs in your head get rewarded and which ones get punished. And if you get those basic things wrong, it's going to be really hard for you to understand anything I'm saying here. It's going to be hard for you to understand, to see it, because you won't be able to feel any of it. And some word, like I said, I mean, there's people who the word fairness just doesn't mean anything to them. It just doesn't. It's not a sacred word. All right. So let me see. My last reply was, would you agree that feelings is the only part of braining that needs awareness? I.e., an unfelt feeling can't do its make value thing. If you get that, then we are just trying to understand why thoughts, that is, concepts, ideas, notions, even ambitions, about doing what the brain has already decided to do. So that's another thing, understanding that what comes into our consciousness is an idea like, I'll go get a vitamin pill. My brain thought of it 6 seconds or whatever before I knew I already decided I was going to do that. So it's like my brain already decided it was going to go get a vitamin. And when I realize it, it's already irrelevant, because I've already set in motion the mechanism to go do it. So it's not even a matter of any real choice at all or decision. It's completely a subconscious mechanism that declares the winner, and I go get the vitamin pill. So the argument is why are any of these thoughts wasting their time in our consciousness? And my argument is they're wasting their time in our consciousness because the only way things can be associated with value is to be spilled into our consciousness. Okay. Why they are wasting time in our feeling space. I think the feelings are being stuck to the thoughts so they can be remembered as one thing and mixed into future feelings in the awareness bowl. So that's really what we're just doing. It's just this feedback loop. We have our reality, then our brain creates a what's my impression, that is, what symbolic things trigger things that are close to this reality. Does this reality have red shit in it? You know, red. Does it have, you know, bottle? What do I recognize in this reality? It stimulates those things. Those things create the memories that pop in here with it and mix with it. And then what's also spilled into it is some impression of a sensation about that. Beer bottle lighter. Beer is bad. People drink too much alcohol. Alcohol's a bad thing. I hate fucking booze. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of this fucking American love affair with being a drunk idiot. So that's my impression. That's my, that's the chain of reasoning that has been through the mill a few times and basically said, although I like having a beer, okay, this hasn't done the human race any good. This shit is bad news, all right? Bad news. And sensible people ought to keep saying, it's bad news. Don't play with this shit, all right? Because it doesn't do anyone any good. It really doesn't. It never makes a person a better person. It only has huge downside potential. So anyway, so the whole commentary is just tied to this stupid image. You know, this meme. And that's all we're really communicating is memes. I'm attempting to explain to you why this is a bad meme, why this bottle thing should trigger a thing in your brain that says, don't do that, don't make lighters out of this shit. You know, make lighters out of homeless cats. Something that needs to be thought of, not this kind of shit. This shit doesn't need to be thought of. This stuff is thought of too often as an answer. We need better things to think of. We need better things to be reminded of. Be reminded of Mr. Spock. Be logical. Be logical. Be logical. Be logical. Be logical. Not like one of these fake Vulcans, though. Be logical like a real Vulcan. You know. So imagine a real Vulcan and be like that, not like this pussy Spock. Because he was a kind of a wimpy, emotional turd in the end. All right. So I think that's it for that commentary, right? So yeah, so it's all this, the consciousness is just a place where the shit is dumped, and the subconscious sees what's dumped, and it restores it in the new version, and then the next time something triggers, the new version spills out, and then it gets modified again, and then it gets stored as the new version, and it just keeps getting modified as the new version. Like right now I have associated beer bottle and Mr. Spock. Look, they're almost the same height. See? Now these two things are stuck together in my brain. Now, 5 minutes ago, no connection whatsoever. Completely on opposite ends of my brain, no doubt. No connecting, there probably wasn't one single neuron connecting Mr. Spock to a bottle of beer. And now, bang. It's all over them. They're both covered. The beer is covered with Mr. Spock, and Mr. Spock is covered with beer. So that's why. That's how the brain works. And it's just reflexes. There's no you controlling anything. There's just programs. And the programs that win are the ones that just don't get any meaningful downvotes. The ones that no other program says, wait a minute, that's bullshit. So when no other program in your head can say, wait a minute, that's bullshit, then the thought wins. That's just it. This, I say, go get a vitamin. If none of my programs say, oh no, man, my foot really aches, I can't do it. I can't go, I can't do it. Or, I have a bit of indigestion, don't eat a vitamin, it just make it worse, blah, blah, blah. Some whine. If there's no whine, I get up and go get a vitamin. Something like that. Alright, so this was a long video, and that's probably enough. I don't know if it was longer than any average video or not, but how long was it? Yeah, it's only an hour. Yeah, you can do that standing on your head, right? Anyway, so appreciate it if you listened all the way through. It's just about the most important subject, is understanding the fact that you are just reflexes. These are just memes or ideas or concepts that you're dealing with, and that if you really want to be a good person, then you just have to define what good means, and you have to get that answer right. And if you think good means support the exploitanists, exploit the inheritance wealthy, then you've really got the wrong answer of what good person means. You've really fucked-hearted yourself. I can make a ton of arguments about all that shit, but yeah, you have to try to get the facts right, get the knowledge bits right, the statistics, so you can do rational reasoning, logic. There's no point in being logical if all your facts are wrong. So first you have to have some kind of brain that's able to, recognize the bullshit. Truther 9/11 bullshit. 9/11 bullshit. 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 Insight bullshit. You know, UFO bullshit. You know, flat Earth bullshit. God bullshit. You know, first get the bullshit out, and then you can deal with these real facts, which are you're stuck in a really bad circumstance in a lot of ways. A huge amount of welfare is at stake. You're captain of a lifeboat that is carrying the last Jedis, okay, that are going to save 1 trillion planets, you know, in the galaxy. And if you don't get this lifeboat to the 1 trillion planets, they're all going to get tortured forever. I mean, there's a huge amount riding on your stupid, cruddy existence, whether you recognize it or not. There could be. It could actually be true that you're in the driver's seat. You're going to decide the fate of the fucking universe. And thinking that you're not, just playing the stupid game of go back to being a fucking monkey, go back to being a fucking cockroach, and just figure out how to keep your antenna clean so you don't get an infection, and you know how to keep yourself busy so you don't get bogged down in any kind of sad thoughts. Fuck that! Alright? I mean, come on. Fight the bullshit. Fight it. Yes. Let the memes that say you got to do better be the memes that win. The ones that inside you know they're there saying you can do better than this. Even when you're being selfish, you can cut a little bit off of the pie and shove it over there. You can save a little bit for the rest of humanity. You don't have to eat it all. Come on. You can be a little generous. Alright. That's enough. So I didn't even play his video. I could play a little bit of it. Just for the sake of being, since I put it up there, I should have played it. But he's going on, this is where he's just talking about, you start off with little squiggly things, you just go squiggle, squiggle, and then you have to get to cockroaches, and they have 7 programs, and they can do left turn, right turn, climb up the wall, climb down the hole, they can do different things. And then you get to humans, and humans have a whole bunch of different stupid antics they can do. So, I mean, he did it in kind of a comical way, so I'll play a little bit of it, but, you know, it's a sort of we're all the way back to, you know, the reptile, the monkey, the man kind of argument I've made in the past. You know, that's what we're trying. I mean, you could make it more detailed. You could go insect, reptile, you know, monkey, man, or you go insect, reptile, dog, man, or something. But clearly, we're capable of doing something quite different than anything else on the planet in terms of we have knowledge of good and bad in an informed way, not a programmed way, in the sense that not programmed by nature, programmed by acquisition of facts.
I've got a worm that goes wiggly, wiggly, wiggly. It could go wiggle, 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 but it doesn't. It always goes wiggly, 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 because its brain is only big enough to have 1 committee member. I go straight on to a cockroach.
Alright, so by committee member, it's just another way of saying the programs. So I should have said that earlier, but so it's just this idea that there's, we had years ago talked about dwarfs, you know, the 7 dwarfs as being kind of an example. You know, that you have your sleepy, you have your dopey, you have your selfishy, you have your greedy, you have these different elements to your personality in terms of bits of identity and bits of collected notions that are kind of a personality because there's enough nuance to them. You know, pussy versus man. You know, girly man, man. You know, silly little things like that. Little bigotries, little prejudices, little ideas of notions, I guess is all. So he's calling the notions committee members. But yeah, so there's a bunch of these competing personalities inside of you, and there's a lever, okay, that is do. So the do lever is there, and so wherever one reaches out and grabs the do lever, he owns their brain at that moment, kind of idea. And then I'm sort of arguing that yes, that's exactly, there's nobody running it. So there's no you running it. There's just all the programs fighting with each other, essentially. And the fight really is a no-vote kind of election. Anybody who grabs the lever can pull it as long as nobody hacks his arm off. So as long as nobody objects, and puts a lock on the lever, he pulls the lever. So there's no organization besides the passions of the no voters. If the no voters aren't passionate enough to stop it, then the act can take place. So there has to be some strong meme to stop it. And so it's just about having a strong meme that says, I don't want to be a fucktard. I don't want to be evil. I don't want to be gratuitously selfish. I don't want to be a raper, a taker, a thief, a creep. And so when some part of me decides to do something creepy, the don't be a creep lever, the guy has to say, the principal says, no, I'm going to stop the creep from pulling the lever.
To give it more, but just to keep in with the story, the cockroach has got 9 committee members, so can do lots of different things. A humane being has got 56 committee members, so can do lots of other things. It doesn't quite work this, but I don't think anyone will notice.
Close enough. Anyway, it wasn't a bad video. I mean, but he's doing it the more narratively story way than the just plain. There's nothing inside of you that wasn't put there by an environmental force. Okay, genetic disposition, birth canal trauma. Chemical poisoning by the environment, too much fluoride, and then the social, cultural constructs, and even your moments in nature. You go out into nature and a frickin' typhoid mosquito bites you right in the forehead and you're sick for 3 weeks. Obviously your association, your connection to nature is going to be a little tarnished by the experience. That kind of thing. But that's who you are. There's no you controlling anything. There's just all of these memes, all of these notions, ideas, concepts, and these little bits of ambition and passion fighting, to define who you are. And it just depends on how strong their arguments are when they go to pull the lever. And so, pulling the lever for, like, somebody offers me a bribe to become a pro-natalist. They offer me a big, huge bribe. And what's going to happen inside my psychology is, there's going to be a piece of me that's going to say, oh, money. I can do a lot of shit with money. But there's going to be the other memes that are going to say, oh, please, don't embarrass yourself. That's just so bad. Oh, that's pathetic. You can't, no, we're not allowing it. That's nonsense. Something like that. I mean, I think I gave myself less credit than I think I have, in the sense I think I can make a much better argument than, that's silly in terms of a better argument about how you have an obligation to do better. But I'm just saying, just from a personal point of view, yes, don't embarrass yourself. That's just so bad. Taking bribes anyway, right? Taking a bribe for anything would almost be obnoxious to me now, just because it's all that doing the right thing for the wrong reason thing. Fuck doing things. Fuck getting to the right end with the wrong method. We can do it right all the way through. We don't have to depend on being wrong to be right. And especially when we know most of the time doing it wrong will get a wrong result, not a positive result. So fuck it. Fuck doing this, playing this cheaters game. Alright, now it's enough of a video. I know it's more than enough, but anyway. 'Tis what it is. Or was.